Yes, no, it is incredibly sunny, but also incredibly important here, really. This part of the world hasn't had that much focus from senior political leaders for a long time. Of course, this particular constituency had been held by the Labour Party since the 1920s. It was only in 2019 that it became in play, that it became that marginal seat, the one that flipped from the Labour Party to the Conservatives. And if the Conservatives really want to maintain any sort of scale of majority at the next election, similar to the one they did at the last, this will be a very important seat. Listening to the views of the people here in this seat will be very important, and that's what this event tonight on GB News from 5 to 6 p.m. With Liz Truss is all about. It's not journalists asking questions, it's not the sort of gotcha moments that you might expect in some of the moments of this campaign. It's real people from this part of the world asking questions of the person who is currently considered to be the front-runner to become the next Prime Minister. It should be a pretty powerful moment. We've got audience members spanning all age ranges and people who really have some burning questions on the biggest issues of the day. So it will be fascinating to see how Liz Truss stands up to those ordinary people asking those crucial questions from 5 until 6 p.m.
We had the 5th hustings last night, Tom. I think it's about a dozen, I think they're going to do in total. Now, they aren't broadcast in the same way, are they? Because they're private events hosted by the Conservative Party. But were there any major headlines from those, Tom, for you last night?
Well, yes, we did see last night Liz Truss having a bit of a moment with the person who was hosting that hustings, Tom Newton-Dunn. She might have been considered to be less than kind about the media at the start of that hustings, only to then be caught on hot mic, leaning over to the compere saying, "I'm sorry I was mean about the media." That was a little moment that did well on social media, but potentially the more significant moment when it comes to substance and policy is this question of energy bills. And what will Liz Truss do as we're seeing energy costs more than double, potentially treble, with that price cap rising and rising? We know that the raw material costs have been rising the world over, and the big question that has emerged out of yesterday's hustings, particularly for Liz Truss, is this question of whether or not she will do more in terms of government spending to help those at the bottom end of the ladder. Of course, she said that she wants to cut taxes to help people with their energy costs. She said that she wants to suspend those green levies on energy bills. That, no doubt, will help everyone, but of course not to the degree of the rise of those energy bills. So the question is, what about those people at the bottom end of the income scale, those who perhaps don't pay tax? Would there be more spending? And this is something that Rishi Sunak is trying to now deliver a clear dividing line between himself and Liz Truss on. The Sunak campaign saying that Rishi will spend more money, put more money directly into the pockets of people who are struggling. Liz Truss having a less clear policy on this as things stand, saying that she wants to help cut taxes for people to help them pay for their bills, but not yet answering that question about what about those people who don't pay tax, what about those people who might be squeezed the most. This morning, one of her key supporters, the Education Secretary James Cleverly, said that she is looking at targeted support, but we haven't heard details yet to that. We didn't hear details last night. Perhaps that's something that we might expect to hear from her at the event later today.
Thank you, Tom. Our viewers have been getting in touch, and Joe has said that Liz should be asked why politicians, both parties, are determined to run this country down. We are dependent on others for energy, dependent on others for our borders, to defend our borders, dependent on private companies for our water, a basic human need. And I think this is something which has been very much brought to people's attention recently. I mean, I was reading this morning that Wessex Water is owned by a Malaysian company called YTL. The British people want to... I think there is starting to be a conversation needed to be had as to whether we nationalise some of these big water companies again and take that into public ownership. It's not a conversation we've had for quite a long time. Those are the kind of questions that she's going to have answers to, aren't they, tonight, Tom?
They certainly are, although I think that particularly Liz Truss, casting herself as this child of Thatcherism, would be very reticent to go back to the days of a nationalised water company and the lack of investment and leaks that led to. The argument is that since water has privatised, the investment has really soared and the quality has gone up. But I think it's very unlikely, given that both Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have been burnishing their Thatcherite credentials, talking about the private market as the way to boost growth and jobs. It's very unlikely that either of these candidates at this stage in the race would entertain that sort of nationalisation.